Hey everybody, welcome to part 4 of our series on making a custom ribbon in Microsoft Access. In this video we're going to discuss some of the VBA you need in order to make your ribbon actually do something for you. So we're going to do two things in this video. First, we're going to make our main menu button open our main menu form, and we're going to make our formatted text button open our formatted text form. After we've got that working, we're going to make each button enable and disable itself based on whether its respective form is open or closed. So we need some code for our ribbon to interact with. Any code your ribbon is going to interact with must be in a public module. It can't be in a form or a report. So I've built a module and I've called it mod ribbon, and I've added a single method to it right now. In order for a ribbon to call code, that code's scope must be public. So this is a public sub. I've called it rib_open_form, and it's going to take a single parameter as input. It's going to take an iRibbonControl object, and that's going to represent the ribbon that's calling it. Inside we have a doCommand_open_form method, and that takes as input a string of the name of the form that you want to open. And notice we have inside the parentheses here control.tag. Now control is our ribbon, and then tag is going to be the tag property or the tag attribute of our ribbon. So let's take a look at our XML for the ribbon. That is here. So here is our main menu button, and we're going to add two attributes to this XML. We're going to add the tag attribute that I just mentioned, and in the tag we're going to give it a string, which is the name of the form that I want to open, which is form main menu. And second, we've added the onAction attribute. The onAction attribute is different for different types of controls. For a button, the onAction attribute represents what you want to happen when the button is clicked. And what we want to run is this code, the rib_open_form method that we just created over here. And back to our XML, I want to add the equivalent code to our second button. That tag is going to be form formatted text, which is the name of that form, but it's going to be the same code we want to run, the rib_open_form method. Remember, that method is a generic method. It doesn't matter which control we give it, as long as it has a tag that has a form name in it. So let me save this. We're going to copy this XML into our database, into form uses ribbons. All right. Then we have to close the database in order to get that new ribbon code to execute. Go to our Home tab, click the Form Main Menu button, and there's our Form Main Menu, formatted text. There's the formatted text form. Now notice though the buttons still are not enabling or disabling themselves. They look the same no matter what. So now we want to tackle the enabling and disabling of those buttons based on what the form is doing. So there are several things we have to do in order to make this happen. In our VBA, we need a reference to our ribbon. It needs to be a public global variable because we don't know which forms are going to need to call or which reports might want to call in the future, so it has to be available all the time. So we're going to make it a public variable. We're going to put it in our code module so that it's available constantly, no matter what forms are open or closed, what reports are open or closed. We're going to call it global ribbon, and it's going to be an iRibbonUI. Next, we're going to make another public method. We're going to call it onRibbonLoad. And all this is going to do is going to take a ribbon, an iRibbonUI, as input, and all it's going to do is set a reference to our ribbon. Set global ribbon equal to the ribbon that called this. Now let's save this. Now how do we call this? Let's bring our XML back on screen. We call this when our ribbon loads. We're going to put the onload attribute at the very top over here, and we're going to put the name of that public method we want to call, onRibbonLoad, right there. So this will load, this code will run when our ribbon is first loaded. Now we want to start adding the code that's going to actually make the buttons enable and disable themselves. And that's pretty easy. We're going to add a new attribute to each of these buttons, here and here. It's the getEnabled attribute. A getEnabled attribute calls code to determine whether or not the control should be enabled or not. And we're going to give it the name of control enabled, and we're going to make that method in just a second here. But while we're on the subject of these get enabled attributes, there are several others of these. There's get image, and there's also get visible, and we'll talk about those probably in another video. But they work the same way. When this button checks to see what state it's supposed to be in, it will run this code to determine whether or not it's supposed to be enabled. So save that. Let's go ahead and load this XML to form uses ribbons real fast. Alright, we'll close that. Then let's head over to our code module for our ribbon, and let's copy in the code that we just made reference to. So again, it's a public method. We call it control enabled, and it takes two parameters. It takes an iRibbon control, not an entire ribbon. It takes just a control as input, and then it also passes the enabled property back to the ribbon that called it. Inside here we have a case statement. We have a control object coming in here as input. We're going to test its ID attribute to see which control has called this method. Back over on our XML very quickly. So we're working with two IDs right now, the main menu ID, which is our main menu form, and the form text ID. Go over here. So this case statement is testing the ID, and if it's main menu, we're going to test whether the form main menu is loaded. If it is loaded, we want to disable the button, make it dim. If the form is not loaded, we want to enable it. In other words, if the form is not loaded, the button should be clickable in order to make the form load. If the form is loaded already, then we don't want the button to be clickable, we want it to be disabled. And then this second case is the same code except for the form text and the form formatted text. Let's save that. So next we need to decide when this control enabled is going to be called. Let's take a look at our XML. So we have a button here, which is part of a ribbon. One of the times that these get methods will be called is when the form is loaded. So when the ribbon is loaded, the ribbon runs through each of these get attributes and runs the code to determine what state each control on the ribbon should be in. And that's the only automatic running of code that we have in the ribbon. If we want it to run other times, we need to tell it to run. So the way we'll do that is we'll go to each form and we will add code to do that. I'm going to copy in two methods here. We can tell a ribbon to invalidate itself. And that means we tell the ribbon to recheck everything, reestablish what images it's showing, reestablish the visibility of all the controls, the enabled state of all the controls, and whatnot. We can also invalidate a single control. We can tell it invalidate this one button, and it will just check the visible and the enabled and the image properties for that one button, or whatever control we have. So we have some code here, which is very simple. Our global ribbon, which is making reference to our global ribbon object we created in our mod ribbon code, and we're telling it invalidate control, and then we give it the ID of the control we want it to invalidate. And we're going to call this same code on form load and on form close. So when form formatted text loads, we're going to tell it we're going to tell it to invalidate the control, and then that control will run its get enabled property, which goes here, over here, and then runs this and tests whether that form is loaded or not. We are running it on the onload event, which means yes, the form will be loaded. The second time we'll call it is when we close the form. Now again, our code over here is testing whether the form is loaded or not. So we're using the close event because the close event runs after the form unload event. All right. Let's save that. Let's pull up our main menu form and copy the same text in there, except it'll have form main menu as the control ID that we want to invalidate. Now I forgot to mention we have an if wrapped around this statement. We're testing to see if the global ribbon object actually exists. If it doesn't exist, of course, we don't want to run this code because we'll blow up. All right. Let's save that. We need to close everything, reload the ribbon. All right. So back to our home tab. We open the form, and when the form opens, we see the button disables itself. Same thing for the formatted text form. We can close the formatted text and the button re-enables itself. Same thing for the format menu. So it's a pretty simple concept, but there seems to be a lot of code in a bunch of different places to make it work. But once you've done it a couple times, it shouldn't be a problem. Hopefully you got something out of this video. As usual, I have the XML and all the VBA linked in the description of the video down below. I'll also have links to the videos prior to this one in this series down below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.